go ahead and get started in about another minute or two. And it looks like we are now live on Facebook. So hello to everyone tuning in to Democrats Abroad's Facebook live stream of today's event with the Democrats Abroad Seniors Caucus in formation. Very excited to everyone tuning in around the world with us today.
Sorry for that slight pause. Just to welcome you all and say that in these turbulent times, those of us interested in forming a senior caucus believe that Democrats Abroad needs a special forum representing those in our organization who are retired or age 65 or over. Some of us seniors living abroad experience particular financial problems, which are unfair. We believe DA needs opportunities to better understand the issues and concerns affecting seniors. So to celebrate International Day of Older Persons, we planned this webinar to look at fairness in retirement. Our aim is to understand how some, if not many seniors living abroad experience partial and unjust treatment or behavior with favoritism or discrimination. Today, we want to look particularly at the need for medical portability and the injustice of Windfall Elimination Provision, which is a provision in United States law that changes the way seniors' U.S. Social Security benefits are calculated. We have a panel of speakers, and we are very lucky to have our key speaker, Stephen Regenstreif, chair of the National Democratic Senior Coordinating Council of the DNC. So welcome all panelists and attenders.
Thank you for that, Betsy. And it looks like we have a few more people who have joined, and it looks like we have got a crowd on Facebook as well. So I would recommend that we officially go ahead and launch this exciting event that, again, the Seniors Caucus information has put together. Again, a warm welcome to everyone, and thank you for joining us today from all around the world on International Older Persons Day for a very special event put together by Democrats Abroad's Seniors Caucus information. My name is Candace Karistan, and I am honored to currently serve as the International Chair of Democrats Abroad. And before we dive in, I just want to take a moment to introduce our organization, as well as what a caucus is and say a few words about our caucus structure. For those of you who might be tuning in for perhaps the very first time, welcome. A little bit about us. Democrats Abroad is the largest organization of US citizens outside of the United States, and we are also an official arm of the Democratic Party. It's our mission to provide Americans abroad of all backgrounds a voice in our government and to elect Democratic candidates by mobilizing the overseas vote. If you aren't yet a member, I invite you to go to democratsabroad.org/join. For those of you who vote in New Jersey, Virginia, or Ohio congressional districts 11 or 15, a second quick ask: do not forget to request your ballot now at votefromabroad.org for the November 2nd elections happening in your states. One of the most empowering structures within Democrats Abroad, in my opinion, are our caucuses. Our caucuses allow Democrats around the world to not only organize around, but collectively act upon issues that matter to them. The community, activism, and voter engagement that has emerged from Democrats Abroad's existing caucuses, which include the Asian American and Pacific Islander, Black, Disability, Hispanic, LGBTQ+, Progressive, Veterans and Military Families, Women's, and Youth caucuses, has been incredibly encouraging and impactful. And it's in this exact vein that I'm so thrilled to see a Seniors Caucus also taking shape within our organization, and to have been invited to join today for this kickoff event. To join any of Democrats Abroad's caucuses, including the Seniors Caucus information, you can go to democratsabroad.org/caucuses. It's my pleasure to now pass the mic to Betsy Attore, the Senior Caucus Information Lead, to say a few words about today's event format and introduce our distinguished speakers.
Thanks very much, Candace. Please note that we'll be gathering questions for our speakers from the Q&A box on Zoom and on Facebook, and we're streaming live right now. So you're welcome to type in your questions as we go along, and we do have some questions planned. But if you have questions for our guests, please type them in the chat box and we'll address them as time permits. I'm going to introduce Steve Regenstreif, but I want to first talk a little bit about his biography, a little bit about him. In 2013, Steve retired as director of the Retiree Department of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. This is the largest organization of public sector retirees in America. Since 1983, while Steve was director, the membership grew from 18,000 dues-paying members to 250,000 retirees in 250 state and local groups. During his tenure as director, he served on the boards of the Leadership Council of Aging Organizations and the Alliance for Retired Americans. He was also a delegate to the 1995, 2005, and 2015 White House Conferences on Aging, the 1998 White House Conference on Social Security, the 2006 National Summit on Retirement Savings. In October 2017, he was reelected to a third term as chair of the National Democratic Seniors Coordinating Council. As a result of holding this position, he is a member of the Democratic National Committee. Steve, I welcome you to speak. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Betsy, and I want to congratulate you on your work on getting a Seniors Caucus started in Democrats abroad. This is very exciting, and I look forward to working with you today and in the future as we move forward. The Seniors Council is an official body of the DNC. We were started in 1997. Our purpose is to give older Democrats a voice in the DNC, for seniors to use their experience and expertise on issues such as Social Security and Medicare and other senior issues, and to mobilize older Democrats both on legislative issues as well as on political action. I think one of the valuable services we provide is to advise candidates and campaign staff. And as we know, a lot of campaign staff are young people, and so they're not familiar with senior issues. So we advise candidates and campaigns on senior issues and also on how to work with seniors when they're putting together their political program. And I think that's one of the valuable services that we provide. The composition of the Seniors Council, we're obviously made up of older Democrats from around the country. There's a lot of union retiree groups, like I come out of the labor movement, out of the AFSCME retirees. We have other various senior citizen organizations that do politics that are affiliated with the Seniors Council. And we also have a number of DNC members who are seniors who are also members of the Seniors Council. There are currently Seniors Caucuses in some 20 states, and we're currently organizing in Maine and in Wisconsin to start Seniors Councils in those states. I think I'd like to start off by kind of talking about the seniors platform. You know, both the Biden proposals during the campaign, the Biden plan for old Americans, as well as the Democratic Party platform that was adopted at the convention, the virtual convention in Milwaukee, was the best ever for seniors. The strongest, the most comprehensive, the most robust platform for seniors that in all the years I've been working with seniors that we've ever had. It proposed increasing Social Security benefits for all beneficiaries, increase the minimum Social Security benefit, increase the Social Security benefits for long duration beneficiaries, empower Medicare to negotiate prescription drug prices, which is an enormous issue for seniors, and it was a very effective issue politically, to cap out-of-pocket drug costs for seniors, and to find policies to expand Medicare to cover dental, vision, and hearing. And as I'm sure you all know, that in the reconciliation bill proposed by President Biden, there is an expansion in Medicare to cover dental, vision, and hearing, which is a major victory that was in the proposal, and we have a lot of support in Congress for that. And then last but not least, because I know this is a big issue for you, is both the platform, the Democratic Party platform, and the Biden plan for older Americans propose eliminating both the WEP and the GPO. So we have the Democratic Party as well as the president on board eliminating both the WEP and the GPO. I know in a lot of your written materials, you highlight the WEP issue, but I would also put in there with an equal status elimination of the GPO, because that also is a major issue for seniors on an equal status with the WEP issue, particularly in some of the states where we have co-sponsors for those bills. So I would just put both of those together. So in the last presidential campaign, we had the largest and the most robust seniors program operation since we were established in 1997. We had an extensive field program in battleground states. We did various Zoom events. We did seniors phone banks. We developed a seniors toolkit. We did develop a letters to the editor program. We did op-ed pieces. We developed phone scripts. We developed talking points and a whole series of policy issues. And we developed a national Seniors for Biden group. The results of the campaign that we did very well with seniors. What I like to cite is an analysis by a guy named Tony Fabrizio, who was Donald Trump's leading pollster. And one of the major groups that he claims why Trump lost the election was for seniors. Now, if you look at the battleground states, the states that flipped, a lot of different constituencies can claim that they made the difference in the 5 battleground states. But we will say we made the difference as well, and particularly since one of the top Trump pollsters says that we were a key factor. So if you look at the 5 states that flipped from red to blue, Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. In those 5 states that we won, obviously by a very narrow margin in some of those states, when you look at the voters over 65 in the 2016 election between Trump and Hillary Clinton, Trump got 55% of those voters, Clinton got 42%. For a margin, we lost those seniors in 2016 by 13 points. But when you look at the 2020 presidential race, in the same 5 states, Trump got 52%, Joe Biden got 47%. So the margin was only 5 points. So we had a next shift of 8 percentage points. And by narrowing the margin among seniors, we played, I think, a very significant role. And obviously the Republicans believe that we did well in that election. Now, from our past experience, if we win the senior vote in any election, federal or state, there's no way the Republicans can win, because that's a part of their base vote. But we don't necessarily have to win the senior vote. If we narrow the margin and we get, in this case, it was 5 points. If we get to 3 points or 2 points, it gives us tremendous advantage, moving forward. So so voters over 65, as we know, are the most consistent voters, especially in midterm elections. In both 2020 and 2018, more than a quarter of all votes cast were people over 65. In the 2018 midterm elections, 66% of all registered seniors turned out to vote. And in 2020, senior turnout was 74.5% among seniors, the highest percentage of any group. So obviously, seniors are going to be an important constituency, particularly important in the off-year elections. So I want to close with this. In 2018, the senior vote, the Republicans in 2018 got 50% of the senior vote, and Democrats got 49%. So the margin in the last off-year election was only 1 point. It was essentially a wash. And I think that was a key factor for picking up, for the Democrats picking up over 40 House seats. And if we could repeat that margin in 2022, or even do better, I think we'll have a very successful off-year election. One thing as we move forward that I would like your input and your ideas and how we work together is that we're going to have a lot of battleground states in 2022, a lot of important Senate races. I think we have some very good opportunities. We're starting to work in some of those battleground states. So how do we plug in or work with you, with the Democrats abroad who are in these, battleground states? So I look forward to working with you. I think this is a great pleasure. I'm very excited about this. And I want to just add by saying the policy document you put together was terrific. It was clearly comprehensive. It was robust. It was very detailed. And I haven't seen anything like that among any of our groups. So you're off to a great start. So that's it for me. And I look forward to participating in your meeting.
Thank you very much, Steve. And yes, we want you to continue in the meeting because we have some questions that we're also going to give to you. Jim, do you think you could introduce our second speaker?
Oh, it'd be my pleasure. I'd like to introduce Carmelan Polchek, who is the chair of the DA Taxation Task Force. She's served on this team since it was created in 2011, serving as its chair since 2014. The Taxation Task Force has a 5-pronged advocacy strategy aimed at achieving tax relief for Americans abroad. We're looking at, or they are looking at, research, thought leadership, grassroots activities, congressional outreach, and direct constituent engagement. Over the last 10 years, Democrats Abroad has built a reputation for committed tax advocacy and has cultivated robust relationships on Capitol Hill in both houses of Congress and on both sides of the aisle. Carmelan has lived and worked abroad in Bolivia, Australia, and Singapore. She has a BBA from Temple University and an MBA from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. She lives in Sydney, Australia, and votes in Pennsylvania. Carmelan, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. I'm going to introduce the Windfall Elimination Provision. I believe we have some slides about the impact of the Windfall Elimination Provision on the Americans abroad community from research that Democrats Abroad did as part of our taxation work in 2019. So I'm not sure if those slides are going to be shared. Maybe I'll just jump into my presentation then. So the Windfall Elimination Provision was designed in the 1980s to prevent the so-called windfall that federal employees would reap when they transferred into the Social Security retirement system, which they've exempted from. So in 1984, Congress mandated that all government workers needed to participate in the Social Security system, but they realized many civil servants would retire having paid in only the minimum amount of 4 quarters or a little more, and they'd reap benefits out of proportion with their contributions. This double dipping was the concern because these retirees would have a federal pension, and in effect they'd get that full pension plus full Social Security benefits, and that would give them a far greater benefit compared to other retirees who contribute into the Social Security system for, say, many more years. So to adjust this inequity, Congress included in this 1983 Social Security Fairness Act amendment this offset, the Windfall Elimination Provision, and it has the effect of removing up to 40% of the Social Security benefit to workers who worked at any time for an employer who was not required to pay into the Social Security system, and that's all of the Americans abroad who have worked abroad in addition to working in the United States. So I don't think we have the slides. Maybe we can distribute them afterwards, but what our research established is 29.9%, so 30% of the research participants were over the age of 65. 20% of them are collecting Social Security benefits. 1 in 6 of them have WEP reduction impacting their Social Security benefits. And then there was a further 40% who weren't actually sure. So the number could be even higher. So if we're extrapolating that, that could be as many as a couple 100,000 Americans abroad at minimum. More than 56% of them report that their Social Security benefits are reduced by more than 25%. So it's a huge hit on their payment. And they about 60% are saying that it's making a moderate to a very material, very big impact on their budget. So this is a serious issue for up to maybe 500,000 Americans abroad, because it makes a big impact. So the numbers are big, the impact is big, and it's something that Democrats Abroad is going to now be working on with a focus team, building a strategy that takes quite I suppose a multi-dimensional approach to generating some relief for Americans abroad from the WEP.
Okay.
And back now.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Carmelette. So we'll now move on to Brendan Reed. Brendan is a DA member who resides in Canada and is a dual American and Canadian citizen. He's been active with the Democratic Party in the US and with the Liberal Party in Canada. A business journalist, Brendan has covered international matters, notably legislation, regulations, and trade. He has also worked on environmental, social, and transportation issues on both sides of the border. Brendan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jim. Hello, my name is Brendan Reed. I'm here to discuss the Windfall Elimination Provision, or WEP, how it impacts Americans living abroad, and what can be done about it. As Carmelin pointed out, the WEP prevents workers from gaining for what it calls quote unquote windfalls from the Social Security's progressive benefits formula, which is aimed at helping low-income individuals. But the WIP also applies to individuals who have worked in other countries that have government-sponsored employment pension programs similar to Social Security, like Canada, where I live, which has the Canada Pension Plan, Quebec Pension Plan, or CPP, QPP for short. According to the on the September 14th, 2021 report by the Congressional Research Service, or CRS, opponents to the WEP argue that it substantially reduces a benefit that workers may have included in their retirement plans. Plus, it reduces benefits disproportionately for lower income individuals. And the current WEP formula is an imprecise way to determine the actual windfall when applied to individual cases. The WEP criticism outlined by the CRS is right. The amount of benefits that you are eligible for in other countries may not be high. That goes for employment-based pensions and also for old age pensions in those nations, which fortunately are not impacted by the WEP. But both these programs are becoming critical for retirement as companies eliminate their pensions and as costs, like housing, skyrocket. WEP is particularly unfair for Americans abroad who have worked in other countries because we paid into programs like CPP, QPP, and their country's taxes, and we have every right to receive those benefits. So why should we be penalized by Social Security on our covered American earnings? We have every right to receive every dollar that we work for in the US. After all, we had FICA deducted from our paychecks, and yes, we paid US taxes. Let's look at Canada. The average amount for new CPP, QPP beneficiaries this year is about $558 a month in US dollars. The maximum you can receive under Canada's old age security is in 2021 is just $491. Some windfall. In contrast, the average estimated US Social Security benefit for 2021 is $1,543 a month. Yes, in many countries, you have government-sponsored health insurance. In Canada, you may have to pay premiums depending on which province you live in. In Ontario, it is added to your tax bill, though it is offset by a generous stroke benefit plan that covers those 65 and over. But Canada's taxes are high. In fact, you pay taxes on your CPP, QPP, and OAS, and the full, and you also don't, you get 15% deduction on your on taxes for Social Security. It doesn't cover the entire amount. So how does the WEP reduce the retirement earnings of Americans abroad? Here's an example from Canada from 2019. According to Retirement and Financial, if your only Canadian pension is the CPP, and the CPP is $500 a month, the most that your Social Security can be reduced is $250 a month. Now, $250 a month is still a fair chunk of change when you retire, especially, as noted before, the comparatively little that you get on CPP and OAS. Some American expats have decided, logically, to take their CPP early, which can be done as early as 60, but at a lower amount. They figure that even with that, they will be ahead of the game because of the WEP. So yes, let's get rid of the WEP, but not so fast. The WEP appears to have been baked into the US Social Security totalization agreements with some 30 countries, like Canada. These agreements are actually treaties that have been ratified by the US Congress and by governments in those nations. The totalization agreements help individuals who have worked in the US and abroad who would not normally qualify for government-sponsored employment-based pensions. The agreements also avoid them from being double taxed by these benefit programs. But these agreements present 6 potential issues and questions regarding the WEP. 1, if the WEP is eliminated, will it harm those workers who benefit from the agreements? 2, if not, would removal of the WEP require amending these agreements? Like, what is it, like a thread on a sweater? If you pull a thread, will it unravel the entire sweater? And which would necessitate the approval of Congress as well as by the governments of those nations. 3, if WEP removal does affect these treaties, would the Senate and House bills aimed at eliminating it, like the Social Security Fairness Act, HR 82, have to be changed accordingly? 4, if Congress has to approve changes to these agreements, is it politically wise to add this on its agenda? What with the deep divide between Democrats and Republicans? 5, would reducing the financial impact of the WEP, as proposed in HR 4788, the Well-Being for Every Public Servant Act of 2021, also apply to Americans living abroad who are impacted by this clawback? And finally, 6, is there any opportunity to eliminate the applicability of WEP to Americans abroad through simpler changes to other legislation? Here's the harsh political reality. The numbers of Americans abroad affected by the WEP clawback are too small to matter in this bigger scheme of things. According to the CRS, only 106,756 workers in foreign countries and outlying areas are impacted. But as former Democratic House Speaker Tip O'Neill famously and rightly pointed out, quote, all politics is local, end quote, meaning that individuals' concerns do matter. And if my understanding of Congress, even this one, is correct, it does open the door to, quote, if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, end quote. Namely, if you help pass changes to WIP, I will help you with a bill that is of concern to you and your constituents. So which leads me to my final point. What do we do next regarding WIP? One, do we need to perform more homework on its impacts on Americans abroad? Two, should we ask subject matter experts on treaties like the totalization agreements, as well as on the WEP, what can be done? Should we arrange conversations with senior Capitol Hill staff who have these backgrounds through our context? And finally, once we have all our facts together and a way forward, what is the best way to mobilize Americans abroad? What critical points should they raise with their representatives, senators, and with President Biden? And most importantly, what is our messaging so that our lawmakers will care and act? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brent. Okay, well, continuing on and also still looking at the web, we have Betsy Parks, who's our next speaker. Betsy was born in Connecticut. She has a BA in British Literature and a BS in Special Education from Southern Connecticut State University in New Haven, Connecticut. Also, she has a BS in English as a Foreign Language, or EFL, from the School for International Living in Brattleboro, Vermont. She taught for 14 years in special education in both Connecticut and Vermont, and taught EFL, ESL, English as a Second Language, on the East Coast. Moving to Spain in 1985, Betsy taught EFL, ESL in the Complutense University of Madrid and a variety of Spanish banks from 1986 to 2019. She taught EFL in Mozambique for 7 summers. Betsy retired in 2019. She is a ceramist and accredited yoga teacher. Currently, she gives private English and yoga lessons. Betsy, we would love to hear from you.
Thank you. I just unmuted. Yeah, I'd just like to make a correction. I retired in 2017 here in Spain, not 2019. Hello?
Oh, yes, sorry, my mistake.
Yeah, it was 2017, almost about 4 years ago.
Okay, the floor is yours, Betsy.
Yeah, have you just heard what I said? Because I didn't get any response. I don't know if you're hearing what I'm saying. You hear what I say?
Yeah, we're hearing you fine. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So what did you wanted me to explain to you what my situation is in Spain, no?
Yes, Betsy. Yes, Betsy.
Okay, yeah, because I'm not getting feedback from what I say, so I don't know if I should continue. Okay. I retired in October in 2017 from Spain. Now, before then, when I was 6, I retired so I was born in February, so I was going to be 70 years old in February. I retired in October, but from the age of 65 until I retired, I was collecting from the United States, even though I was working here. So I was getting $525, something like that, the whole time that I was also working in Spain. And then when I retired in October, it was difficult for me to find out from the Spanish government how they were working this out with the United States, but they gave me 935 euros a month for my retirement. So I'm from 2017 October I've been getting 935. Maybe it was a little bit less before with when I first got it. And so that was in October. I started to collect from Spain. And then in June, I got a call from the American Embassy in Madrid. And the man said that, he said, "Oh, how are you?" He said, "So we've heard that you've retired, and you retired in October." And I said, "Yes, that's right." And he said, "Well, you'll have to fill out some forms because you're going to have to pay back because of the windfall thing. They reduced it to $225, and they wanted me to return the money from October until June, that extra $250 that they were giving me, because they said because of the windfall elimination program, they had to reduce my pension and I would have to return that money, or I can contest it by explaining why I didn't think I should return that money." So I had to go through this whole process of saying I didn't know about it. I had to justify what my income was here, what my rent was, what I was paying for everything monthly, and why I thought I shouldn't have to pay that money back. So I did that, and they accepted it, and I didn't have to return that money, thank God. But since then, I've been getting the 935 euros from Spain and $220 from the United States. And that's basically because of the windfall thing. They reduced it by half, by 50%. And I don't know how they worked it out. I tried to find it out from the Spanish government. They said that it had to do with what I was getting in the United States and how many years I worked in Spain. The thing about in Spain is the problem was I worked for 31 years in Spain, but because many companies where I worked didn't pay into the system because they were supposed to, but they didn't have to. I mean, the government didn't check if they were doing that or not. I only received 15 years of payment here it's called cotización, meaning I only received 15 years instead of 31 years. I could have reclaimed that from the companies I worked for, but of course the companies didn't last and they weren't in existence anymore, so I couldn't get that money back. Working at the Complutense and some of the universities that I worked in Madrid, they were paying into the system. But in the companies, in the banks, for example, and in the private companies that I worked for, they didn't pay into the system. So I only ended up with 15 years instead of 31 years. And that's how they came to 935 euros a month that I received. So that's basically the way it is. So I get half of my pension in the United States and I get 935. And so I have continued working. That's fine. I'm doing things that I like to do now that I didn't do before. I didn't teach yoga before this. Of course, I've always taught English classes, but I'm doing both of them to augment my monthly income. So that's basically what my story is.
Thank you, Betsy, for sharing that with us. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and our next speaker is Heather Stone. Heather is a member of DA Israel. She became a licensed attorney in New Jersey in 1988 and practiced municipal bond law in New Jersey from 1988 to 1990. She moved to Israel for academic work in urban planning, passed the Israeli bar in 1993, and practiced law with a few of the largest law firms in Israel in the high-tech sector, doing investments, international mergers and acquisitions, and international investigations of publicly traded companies. In 2017, she became visually impaired following brain surgery. She now volunteers for Democrats Abroad, currently as the Deputy International Counsel Global and the chair of the Medicare Portability Task Force. A founding member of the Global Disability Caucus, and she's the current vice chair of DA Israel. In addition, she serves on the boards of several not-for-profit organizations in Israel and was the past chair of Democrats Abroad Israel. Heather is a mom of 2 grown teens and 2 dogs, including 1 guide dog and 1 support dog. She continues to learn to navigate the world differently, and she will discuss for us the issues of Medicare portability. Thank you, Heather.
Thanks very much for having me today. It's a pleasure to be with everybody. So I'm going to talk about something a little different than the windfall elimination provision. I'm going to talk about Medicare portability. Medicare portability is a topic that was brought up before Democrats Abroad at the May global meeting, and was resolved almost unanimously, if I'm not mistaken, it was unanimously, that this is a topic that Democrats Abroad cares about deeply, and that we should have a task force to address the subject. And so just recently, a task force was formed and has begun working. And why should we care about this? It's something that I think seniors in particular should be concerned about, because as many of you probably know, being in the age group, Medicare is a subject area that touches and concerns people over the age of 65. But it particularly is something for Americans who live overseas to be concerned with, because Medicare has certain limitations when it comes to the borders of the United States. So I just want to touch on a couple of things about Medicare and some of the challenges that are facing Medicare. And then we'll dive into what we need to be concerned with. But Medicare basically breaks down into 2 parts, which I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with. But Part A is your hospital insurance, which covers inpatient hospital stays and care at nursing facilities and hospice care and so forth. And Part B is the medical insurance that covers, going to the doctor, outpatient care, medical supplies, or preventative services. Part A is your free coverage. So if you or your spouse paid into Medicare with your taxes, for a certain period of time of working, then you're entitled to Part A services. And you get that premium free Part A coverage. Go into a hospital, you get coverage, and you get this benefit. It's also available to people who under some certain other circumstances, but I don't think it's really worth getting into all of the ins and outs of it. If you're not eligible for the premium free Part A, you can also purchase it. But regardless, you can buy Part B coverage. So Part B is the part that most people get curious about. And that's the Part B monthly premiums, which is the part that gets deducted from your Social Security benefits. And the standard premium is about $150, a little bit less than $150. Some people goes up based on your income. It can go up to, I think, about $500. And it's basically like a copay for your doctor services and outpatient therapy and so forth. It's about 20% of whatever Medicare approves on the amount. So what is the issue, and why do Americans overseas need to be concerned about this? Well, because Americans overseas cannot access Medicare benefits. So even though you've paid into the system, and who are these Americans who pay into the system? Well, it's all the Americans who lived in the United States and worked in the United States before coming to live overseas. And it's also Americans who continue to work for US companies while they're overseas. And it's also Americans who work as freelancers and continue to pay Social Security while they are working overseas. So all of these people continue to meet the Social Security requirements, and so they continue to pay into Social Security even while they are overseas, and they are fulfilling all of the requirements for Social Security and Medicare, but they will not be able to have the benefits of Medicare once they reach Medicare age. So those benefits are available only inside the United States. The Part B premiums are deducted from your Social Security benefits or billed to you, regardless of your inability to access the Medicare. And about 27% of DA membership, for whom we have birth date info, are over the age of 60. And I believe that it's 20% are over 65. I didn't check the latest FVAP data survey. I think the last one I'd have was 2018, but 20% of respondents were over 65. So that's why it should concern us. Medicare is not a self-sustaining system, and it must find some way to save some costs. And it has to learn to figure out how to outsource some of its services. And one of the things that it should be looking to do is to outsource services to foreign countries which have equivalent medical care at lower costs, which could be a way to save costs for Medicare. So one of the things that we are looking to do as a task force is to bring to Medicare the opportunity to do a feasibility study that will bring data to the Medicare organization, Medicare, that will see how they can save costs, provide equivalent services, and provide services to both Americans who want to move overseas as well as Americans who live overseas. To that end, we will be conducting a survey, which we are currently working on. And when that survey comes out, we would like all of your help in being able to reach as many members of Democrats Abroad, friends and family, et cetera, to get as much data about Americans who live overseas as possible, about their conditions and what kinds of health benefits they have in their country where they're living, and under what circumstances. And hopefully we will be able to get changes in the legislation and get Medicare portability to become a reality for Americans living overseas. We have a great team working on the task force, and I invite everyone who's interested in the subject to come and join us and lend a hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. That lays out very nicely the issue of the Medicare, or the lack of portability and the need for portability for Medicare. Next up, I have a story of that reinforces the consequences of the lack of Medicare. Personal occurrence from Eric Jackson, who lives in Panama. His Wi-Fi is not reliable, so he asked that I read his story. As you will soon see, it's a very vivid revelation of why Medicare portability can have enormous, or lack can have enormous consequences. Okay. Now, Panama has a bifurcated socialized Medicare medicine system alongside a private system, and more or less has had this since the late 1930s. It also has a predatory, opportunistic business culture, some features of which have led Panama to be on the EU's financial blacklist. This culture has spawned the notion that foreigners with money are encouraged to park their money via anonymous corporations in numbered bank accounts and buy overpriced real estate in public social security, in upscale gated communities, condo towers. But for ordinary individuals in ordinary healthcare, they depend upon a public social security and Ministry of Health hospitals and clinics, which keep prices in the private side down for the most part. But for medicines, for nursing home care, for expensive things like cancer treatment, there are generally poor services available. And if you need that on the private side, you're going to be paying so-called gringo prices. For a lot of things, you do not qualify, for example, if you're uninsured in the social security system or are not a citizen of Panama who qualifies for full use of Ministry of Health system, you still have the option to walk in and pay for services if they are available. Eric was born to American parents in Panama. He grew up colonial in the old canal zone until age 13 and then moved back when he was in his early 40s. By circumstances of birth, he is a dual citizen of Panama and the United States. Now, one of the rallying cries of the neo-fascism in Panama is to strip people like Eric, whose parents were not Panamanian, of their Panamanian citizenship. So that is an ongoing concern. Furthermore, if you die in Panama, the legal system and the culture encourages the looting of your estate, and there's very little legal protection. From the standpoint of medical care, again, if you need care that is available, it's a very good system. What would you pay in the United States if you walked into an emergency room with dengue fever? At the public policlinica near where Eric lived, he did that and paid $18 for all the services and medicines and a free follow-up. But then again, he's a Panamanian citizen. For his stepfather, who was not a Panamanian citizen, he was afflicted with Alzheimer's, ended up in private care in a for-profit nursing home, which was a hellhole where he died of septicemia from infected bed sores. For his brother, who was not a Panamanian citizen, he developed liver disease. The family paid for his initial hospitalization and stabilization at a Ministry of Health facility. But at that point, when it was thought that he might have liver cancer and needed tests to determine if that was the case, he was told that this service was not available for foreigners. He had to leave Panama, return to the United States in order to get treatment. He did so and died of hepatitis in Colorado a year later. Eric's latest medical emergency was when a gang of young thugs had been breaking into houses in his neighborhood, including his house, to steal things. They weren't just picking on him as an ethnic American, one of the few white people in the neighborhood. They were picking on those who they thought were easy pickings. The police were informed but declined to send anyone out for him or for anyone else being hit by this wave of break-ins. They expected people to pay for private protection. These thugs would often hang out next door, and on June 4th, they escalated, smashed a hole into his bedroom wall, and began stealing things. Whenever he was out, they would return and take more things. Then he called them out in public, which was a crazy thing to do. But when when you pick on someone who's not only a manic depressive, but also an agitator and journalist, that's what's going to happen. So on June 22nd, a gang of 5 maleantes, which is thugs in Panamanian Spanish, assembled in front of his house and throwing stones and beer cans at the dogs and at him. Then they attacked him. He was put in a chokehold, which he broke by biting the fellow on the forearm, was then beaten by 5 people, one of whom hit him in the temple with a rock. They robbed him of his remaining tools of his journalistic trade, computers and cameras, and smashed his house up some more. Some neighbor women saw what was happening and called the cops. And this time the police did come and the maleantes fled. But they did find the guy who put him in a chokehold, wandering the streets, and they were able to pick him out because he had this identifying bite mark on his forearm. The cops took him to the town's clinic where the doctor took a look at him and said he needed to go to the provincial hospital and get a CAT scan and an EEG. But then another couple of cops came and took him not to the hospital, but to the prosecutor's office, where the receiving prosecutor held him for more than 6 hours of questioning, insinuated that he was a racist, repeatedly warned him about the penalties for filing a false police report. When she finally finished in the wee hours, instead of taking him to the hospital, she had the prosecutor van take him back to a smashed up home, told him to wait for more prosecutor visits the following day. Repeatedly at the public ministry, he produced his Panamanian cedula, which is the official government ID, but they kept on demanding a U.S. passport, which appears to be one of the things stolen and which was expired anyway. The good side is that the police did arrest the assailants, recovering a cheap Nokia phone of his from one of them. The lieutenant confided that one of the things they did was to parade the suspects in front of the neighbors in handcuffs. So then he went back to the receiving prosecutor's office, where she presented him with the phone in a plastic bag. He said, "It looks like mine, but I have to check." She objected, but her superior, with the police standing nearby, overruled her. Phone was taken out. He turned it on. There was a call log that included his mother, so that was positive identification of the phone. A new prosecutor took the case. Now 4 of the 5 attackers are in preventive detention for aggravated robbery. They'll go to trial next year, perhaps 5-year sentences in Panama's hellish prisons, so no cause for glee on his part. But back to the medical side of this, finally, more than 2 days after the attack, he was taken to the hospital. There was a CAT scan and various other tests were taken, but the EEG was on. He was told he had cerebral hematoma, but it was not bleeding anymore, so he would not die. He was given 5 medicines, a prescription for 5 medications, and then sent to a pharmacy. Under the rules of when cops bring crime victims to the hospital, all the medications are supposed to be free at the public pharmacy, but the pharmacy only had 1 of the 5. So he had to buy the other 4. It cost us $68 from private pharmacy. Fortunately, his laptops were surreptitiously returned. He believes by the family of Montes, but he can't be sure. Readers of the Panama News, which publishes on donations, helped him patch up the holes in his house, improve the fencing and some work. He's still not fully recovered, but he lacks resources to pay privately for the specialists he would need for more treatment and closer examination. So he's resorted to his garden for herbal cure, teas of the cecropia leaf and the turmeric root, and letting time reconnect the synapses. Life goes on at 9 degrees north latitude, but it would be so much better if there were a U.S. Panamanian treaty that ensured something like Medicare for Panamanian citizens of the U.S. and for U.S. citizens in Panama. Some form of Medicare portability that would make those services available to him would make it all the difference in a situation like this. Okay, and that is Eric's story, and we thank him very much for sharing it with us.
Thanks very much, Jim, for moderating. And I'd like to thank Steve, Carmel, Ann, Brendan, Betsy, Heather, and Eric for sharing so many valuable insights with us. And we do have a number of questions. I'm going to start with one for Steve. In your experience, Steve, what is the importance really of having senior activists in our community?
Well, I think we bring a lot of experience. We bring a lot of knowledge. We bring a lot of wisdom. I think, we contribute a lot to, the overall community, and particularly in the, in the political universe. I think one thing that I always like to say is that if it wasn't for the Democrats, we wouldn't have Social Security, we wouldn't have Medicare. When we look at who started those programs, who expanded those programs, and who added on spousal benefits and survivor benefits, disability benefits, it was the Democrats. And I think it's upon us, to remind people on who started these programs and a lot of others. I mean, minimum wage, we could go on and on and on about what programs Democrats started. And we need to remind younger voters of that. Sometimes we need to remind seniors of that too. One of the questions in the chat was, why do some seniors vote for the Republicans? I think they get captured by other issues. So we always take the position that if a senior voter goes into the voting booth and is thinking about Social Security, is thinking about Medicare, is thinking about prescription drugs and having Medicare be able to negotiate the prices for prescription drugs, they're going to vote for the Democrats. If they're thinking about other issues, that are prone to the the Republicans promote, then we can lose them.
Thank you very much. We do have another question for you. And that is that although seniors living in America don't experience unfairness with regards their Social Security payments or Medicare, what sorts of unfairness do seniors in the US experience?
Well, I think there's a certain element of ageism in America. I mean, where people do discriminate against older people. I mean, I think just because we're older, we can contribute to society. And I think we do. And I think we need to educate younger people that, we have a lot to offer and contribute. And we still want to make a contribution.
Thank you very much. On to you, Karen.
Okay, this question was for Carmel Ann. Is she still with us in the meeting or did she have to leave? She left. Yes?
She's left. She's
okay,
left.
So you have her answers for it, but here's the question. What's the status of legislation to get rid of WEP, the WEP, or at least to bring some relief to the 3% of Social Security beneficiaries who have to deal with WEP?
Okay.
Or what can we do about it to get rid of WEP?
Okay, so this is Carmel Ann's written answer. She did written answers for two of the questions because she had to leave for her taxation task force work. She's meeting with Representative Christina Houlihan from Pennsylvania on a special meeting. So she's written down, as I say, her answers for us. So she says, in answer to Karen's questions, Bills to repeal and reform WEP have been introduced in Congress. It's not clear why the bills have not progressed through Congress when they have such robust sponsorship. And she gives three. First, Social Security Fairness Act, introduced in both House and Senate in 2021. HR 82, introduced in the 117th Congress by Representative R. Davis from Illinois on the 1st of April. This has bipartisan support and 229 co-sponsors. It eliminates WEP, which in some instances reduces SS benefits for individuals who also receive a pension or disability benefit from an employer that did not withhold Social Security taxes. The status of this act is it's referred to the Ways and Means Committee and Social Security Subcommittee. There's also S 1302, introduced again in the 117th Congress by Senators Brown from Ohio and Collins from Maine on the 22nd of April. It has bipartisan support and 34 co-sponsors. That also eliminates WEP, which in some instances reduces Social Security benefits for individuals who also receive a pension or disability benefit from an employer that did not withhold Social Security taxes. The status, it's referred to the Senate Finance Committee, and also has been introduced in both houses of Congress for at least the last 20 years. Then secondly, there's the Public Servants Protection and Fairness Act of 2021, HR 2337, introduced in the 117th Congress by Ways and Means Committee Chairman R. Neal on the 1st of April. It has bipartisan support and 177 co-sponsors. It establishes an alternative formula to calculate Social Security benefits for those impacted by WEP, adjusts the individual's total lifetime earnings based on the proportion of earnings paid from employers that did not withhold Social Security taxes. It's referred to the House Ways and Means Committee on Social Security, and it's introduced in the House in the 116th Congress as well. And lastly, there's the Equal Treatment of Public Service Act of 2020, S3401, introduced by Senator Cruz in the 116th Congress on the 3rd of May. It has two co-sponsors. It phases in a new formula for determining benefit amounts under WEP. No, there's no Senate equivalent in the 117th Congress.
We do the follow-up question. Do you have any notes there that tell us if any Americans are exempt, that is Americans abroad, are exempt from the windfall provision, and who are?
I don't have that. I don't have that from her. Okay.
Maybe we'll get feedback on it later then.
Good.
Okay. Do you want to, you're going to go on and ask Brendan? Okay.
Yeah, the second question, do you want to ask me that? It's about what can DA do to get rid of WEP? Don't worry. Okay, so this is a suggestion from Carmela Ann. She says, build a team to work on WEP reform. Have subject matter experts, research and relationship building with allies, have campaign leaders, grassroots activism. She also talks about research. She says to update DA data on the impact of WEP on Americans abroad, establish which public sector employee or other organizations are already hard at work on WEP repeal and reform. And she said, these are people that are the allies. Build a better understanding of obstacles to the existing legislation, perhaps through allies. Build relationships with WEP advocacy allies, establish an advocacy strategy. For instance, she says public research, congressional outreach when you have research to share. Research the Social Security subcommittee members, build relationships with these members. And then she goes on to grassroots activism. She said, have a webinar about SS and WEP, educate activists, engage activists who vote in the districts of the subcommittee members, publish campaigns for activists. And she talks about call storms, message storms, SMS storms, and coordinate campaigns with allies linked to their campaigns. So that's her answer to question number 2. Thanks, Karen.
You're going on to the question for Brendan. You're muted.
Okay.
You can do that if you'd like.
Okay. Okay, Brendan, if we can't get rid of WEP, would it be a good idea to exempt low and middle income individuals? Why?
Low and middle income individuals are the ones who badly need the elimination of the clawback, so we can pay our bills. We need to put, you know, when you're retired, you're on fixed income. You need every bit of resources that you can, and the amount of money that WIP claws back is substantial, and that money that we earn and we paid into rightly belongs in our pockets.
Thanks. Do you have any idea how many Americans living abroad are affected by WEP?
Well, according to both what Carmen has said and from the Congressional Research Service, they didn't break out specifically for foreign, but they looked foreign and also outlying territories over, what was it, over 106,000. Now, what this also doesn't include is the foreign nationals, like, for example, Canadians who have worked, who have Britons who have worked in the US, who got green cards, who paid into Social Security and returned back home. Those numbers are not counted in the CRS data. So the actual number of people who are impacted by the WIP is actually would actually be much larger than what's stated in the US documents.
Okay, thanks. We're getting down a bit short of time, so I'm going to ask one very brief question to Betsy. Before all of this problem started for you, Betsy, is Betsy still on the call? Is she still with us? Yes? Okay. Before all of this started, did you know that your Social Security payments would be affected because you received a Spanish pension?
No, I didn't. No.
Yeah, surprise.
And in addition, I paid taxes on my Spanish pension. This past year, I paid 1,600 euros in taxes on my Spanish, making 900 euros a month, and I paid 1,600 euros in taxes also.
Yeah, these things come in around the corners when you least expect them. I have one more question to ask of Heather about the Medicare portability. It's smart for everyone. US retirees that have paid into the program should receive the benefits that they deserve, that they paid for. US authorities have also argued that certifying healthcare providers abroad would be complicated and cost prohibitive. But if a doctor or a hospital is good enough for a Spanish, French, or British licensure, they would also pass US muster, wouldn't they? So is it really cost prohibitive to have is that a really good argument? Or is it just an excuse that the US government has made in the past?
Well, the US government, in fact, does use foreign providers for certain groups of Americans who are overseas, including US government workers, such as embassy employees. And it also has an entire setup for service members, for members of the military. So it does make arrangements for Americans who are overseas in certain circumstances. So it knows how to do this. It should be able to do this for Americans who are overseas. We just don't know in what format. And we also don't know where the greatest need will be, whether for Western Europe or South America, Asia. That's one of the reasons why we'll be conducting this survey, because it's quite possible that Americans living in Western Europe are covered by the national health funds of the countries where they live because of the way that they're set up. And may not have as great a need for a Medicare portability solution. while people living in places like Panama or in South America or in Asia have a greater need. We've been looking for stories like the one that was shared during this program. But we'll be looking for more direct data-driven information through the survey to find out exactly where those Americans are located.
That sounds really important to just know what we're talking about, in more detail. Great, thank you all for answering the questions. I'm going to hand it back to Betsy now.
Okay, so we have questions, Karen and I, for everyone. And just a very simple question, just off the top of your head, what can we do as seniors to make our lives fairer? Who would like to answer?
I'm not a senior, but I will jump in. I think that having conversations exactly like this are really important. I think that's one of the special things about Democrats Abroad and organizations like us, is that there is this intergenerational conversation going on with people all around the world. And listening to everyone speak tonight has been really enlightening for me as a younger person, to understand issues that are impacting older Americans. And I think that this conversation has been really beneficial to some of our younger attendees on the call. So appreciate everyone for participating and sharing your stories with us.
Yeah, thanks, Carmelan, or Carmelan, right? Okay, thank you, Candace. Try again, Karen. I was just going to add to that, my daughter's now 50. And when George W. Bush put us through all of the panic about, oh, Social Security is going to run out of money, we have to privatize it, it really struck workers in her age group who said, when I get there, there will be no Social Security. And it actually had the effect of boosting the stock market, because people went out and started boosting their 401ks, or not 401ks, their retirement plans. Sorry. I have a question. Trick question. What do you all think? Do you think that the issues we've spoken about during this webinar are issues more for progressive Democrats, or for moderate Democrats, or for the whole Democratic Party? End of question.
I'll jump in. Well, I just had a meeting with the heads of the progressive pro-DA, the pro-DA caucus, and I'm delighted to say that I think it's for everybody, because they weren't so sure that Medicare portability was really a topic that they were concerned about or should be concerned about. But after a discussion with them, they were sure that it was something that concerns their members and should concern their members. And so I am sure that all of these topics will be of concern to them and their members. And so it's concerning to everybody, because life is what happens, and we all become older, and these are issues that touch and concern all of us. And I think that it doesn't matter whether you are a traditional Democrat or a progressive Democrat, everyone should be concerned with these issues.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Karen. Now I'd like to invite each of our panelists to take a minute to share a final thought, if you'd like, before we wrap up. Can we start with Steve? A final thought.
Well, I guess my final thought is, well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. I found it fascinating to participate and hear your discussion. I would say when it comes to the WEP and the government pension offset, there was a question in the chat, what is that? That benefit is the spousal benefits of, it impacts the spousal benefit of Social Security recipients. And they also have, an offset that severely damages their spousal benefit. I will say on both issues, WEP and GPO, I think our best opportunity is when the president proposes proposals to enhance Social Security. I don't think that's going to happen this year, But as I said earlier, there are a whole series of items on Social Security that the president proposed during the campaign. They're in the Democratic Party platform. And I think reform of the GPO and WEP are most likely to come when there is overall Social Security reform. I don't expect the current bills in the Congress will move this session. They got a full plate, and some of those impact seniors, but obviously most of those are seniors in the U.S. But I think if the president proposes Social Security reform, which I think will happen, that's our best opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Betsy, I know you have to leave soon, so why don't you also give your opinion?
Okay, well, the opinion that I wanted, the thing that I wanted to say, it's more of a personal thing, because I came to this country and didn't question the system here and didn't realize that I was working for these companies and they weren't paying into the system. And I would just suggest to young people who go and live in other countries that you really investigate, if you're going to spend a long time in the country, investigate what the system is and what they're paying for you and what they're not paying for you, because I wasn't aware of it for the longest time and I'm paying for it now. Like I said, I worked here for 31 years and I got 15 years of credit for all the time I put into it. So that's pretty much for other people, younger people, to make sure that they understand the system where they're living and working outside of the United States.
Thanks very much, Betsy.
You're
Brendan.
welcome.
Yes,
Brendan.
my wife and I and others living abroad would very much like to see the WEP gone. But I want to make sure, and we should make sure that if it is eliminated, that it would not unravel its organization agreement and harm the people who which those agreements benefit from. These agreements.
Great, thanks very much. Heather, would you like a final comment?
Yes, I just want to, going off of what Betsy said, I think that it's really important that we remember that all of these issues are intergenerational, that workers' rights all lead into what we get going down the line, and that we need, that it's all labor, and that it's all built together, and we need to remember to message those things, that that be careful what your rights are, protect those rights, and be aware of them all throughout. Doesn't matter whether it's in Spain or in the United States, and that those rights lead into what rights you'll have as your benefits when you're a senior, to be able to retire.
Thank you very much, Heather. Okay, so we're going to wrap up in the next couple of minutes, but I'd just like to ask people to remember we're looking for volunteers for our steering committee for the Senior Caucus in formation. And I believe that Fenna has the link and she will put it in the chat box for you so that you could sign up. And you could also use this link if you're interested in learning more about the caucus as it develops. And I just want to thank all of our panelists and participants, the DA Global Caucuses, the International Chair Candice, the International Ex-Com, Fenna Milbauer, Jim Dobson and Karen Lee for being moderators, and the members of the Senior Caucus Information Think Tank. Our event would not have been possible without your support. And now Candice will end with a few reminders. Candice, over to you.
Thank you, Betsy, and thank you to all of you for organizing and participating in today's event. As I just said a few minutes ago, it's been really enlightening as a younger participant to hear your stories, and have really enjoyed this intergenerational exchange. And again, just hats off to this group for forming the Seniors Caucus within Democrats Abroad. Stay tuned. And if you do want to be a part of what's being built, please go to that link that's in the chat or to democratsabroad.org/caucuses, where you can join all of our 9 caucuses. A few reminders just to hammer that point home again. If you vote in Virginia, New Jersey, or Ohio 11 or 15, please request your ballot at votefromabroad.org right now. That's especially important for those races in Virginia and in Ohio, because overseas voters have to send their ballots back by postal mail. So get that in now, 1st of October, and make sure that your voice will be heard in those elections. Along those lines, I wanted to invite all of you to continue volunteering with Democrats Abroad, tuning into our events. All of our volunteer opportunities, from phone banking to putting on an event yourself, can be found at democratsabroad.org. And I hope you'll be a part, again, of our volunteerism and our activism as we gear up for 2022. Last but not least, we are also a donation-funded organization and would really appreciate any contribution from you at democratsabroad.org/donate. That'll really allow us to keep doing the work that we're doing, as was laid out, from everything from taxation to the Windfall Elimination Provision to Medicare. There is so much that still needs to be done, and our group is fighting hard every day to make sure that these issues that impact Americans abroad are heard back in Washington. So on that note, thank you everyone for this energizing conversation. Look forward to seeing you at another event soon, and wish you a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you very much.